Welcome to my digital project for PIDP 3260. My topic today is the Minute Paper, a classroom assessment technique. "1977 was an historic year. In August, the announcement came that the King of Rock, Elvis Presley, had died at his home in Graceland. The world of music was shaken. Later that same year, Radio Shack announced that it would officially start producing the TRS-80, one of the earliest mass-produced personal computers. The computer world was shaken up. But the best was yet to come. In 1977, the education world was shaken up with the advent of the Minute Paper. A little-known fact about the Minute Paper: it was an accident. Let me introduce you to Charles Schwartz, professor of physics at the University of California in Berkeley. This is the man credited for inventing the Minute Paper, and he did it as a way of taking attendance in a very large class. Who knew? An accidental invention. Word of the Minute Paper spread through academia and finally received recognition after it was cited in a paper by Robert C. Wilson in 1983. The article was published in the Journal of Higher Education, Improving Faculty Teaching. Robert C. Wilson was the chief of research on teaching and improvement and evaluation at Berkeley, and the Minute Paper was featured in his article as a new and beneficial classroom assessment technique. So how does it work? Well, it takes between 1 and 10 minutes to administer. You ask the students to use a blank piece of paper or an index card and to respond to 2 questions you've written on the board. You then collect the responses when the students are done. You analyze those responses and you provide feedback to the students. That can either be done immediately or at some point in the future. Now, every assessment technique has its pros and cons, but the Minute Paper is heavy on the pros. This technique is quick and easy, and it has the benefit of engaging the student. You can provide immediate feedback. Students can see if others in the class are struggling with the same issues as they are, and you can determine if your teaching requires a course correction. Studies have shown that the use of the Minute Paper improves listening and retention skills in students, and for you, the instructor, this technique will help you determine if your teaching goals are being met. Cons: yes, there are some. You may have difficulty formulating questions, but with practice, you'll get it right. If your questions are too open-ended, this may lead to very lengthy discussion and response time. But the biggest con: the students may get bored and stop providing you with meaningful feedback. This can be mitigated by varying your questions. There are best practices for this technique. You have to ask the right questions. You need to let the students know when they can expect feedback, and you need to limit discussion time. You can do this by perhaps selecting the 3 most commonly asked questions from the Minute Paper responses. Determine if your question is appropriate to an individual response or if it might function better in a group response, and use the data to determine if you need to make any mid-course alterations. Ask the right questions. On the left, we have the standard from birth type of questions. What is the most important thing you learned this class? What important question remains unanswered? And what is the muddiest or most confusing point of the class? These are the tried and true questions that at the outset students may have trouble answering, but with practice, they'll soon be writing novels. One way to keep the exercise interesting is to ask out-of-the-box questions. What question from this class might appear on the next quiz is fairly thought-provoking. This will help the students reflect on the content of the class and help them focus on important concepts. Thinking about the most surprising idea or concept will produce the same results. It's always possible to tailor your questions to the specific topic you are covering, rather than just the standard questions. If you want to keep your students interested in participating in the minute paper exercise, you may have to change things up a bit. Personalize your questions or tailor them to the class content. An example of this would be to ask students to think outside the box. During a history class, a professor split her students into groups and asked them, based on the information she had presented in class, who would play the lead character if this little snippet of history were made into a movie? And what 3 character traits does the lead character have that would lead you to your selection? As a group activity, the students could share what each of them felt were the most notable traits of this person in history and which actor would best portray these traits. This would allow the students to review the content in class and perhaps remind other students of points they may have missed. No other technique has been used more often or by more college teachers than the minute paper. Try it and see for yourself. Improve your teaching and student learning by introducing this assessment technique into your classroom. Here are some of the sources that I use to do my research on the minute paper. I'm sure if you go looking, you'll find many more. Enjoy your minutes in class.